After having such an interesting day dealing with the new adjustments our neighbors have done, and also dealing with all the fun shit that happens when you come out of hibernation, it was nice to have a good meal and head off towards the bedroom. Although, thanks to the fact that I just came out of hibernation, I wasn't exactly tired. But then again, it was a busy night. After all, my ladies hadn't had any attention in a few months. This definitely made me much more relaxed as I got ready to take off from my mission next morning. And as I received lunch from one of the human women that made breakfast, I took off to see how the other neighbors had weathered the winter. Knowing what direction to go in, it wasn't difficult to find their homestead. With most of their group working outside, it was easy to see that they had a much larger group than I did. Making sure I was seen, I yelled down at them and waved before landing. When I touched down, I seemed to land a bit softer than I used to. Perhaps it was my loss of weight. I am much thinner than I used to be. Or maybe it was the adjustments from transformation. Either way, I didn't have time to think about it. That is, once I heard a few women scream, I was ready for whatever was going to come my way. Though I wasn't as ready as that I thought. Since only a small section of their group had met me before, I was something alien to the rest of them. The screams were from a couple women as though they were under assault. The group that knew me were running around yelling in a desperate attempt to keep the women from shooting me. As I saw them calming the women down, I suddenly felt very happy I was wearing armor. Even though it didn't quite fit right anymore, when that shot rang out and I was knocked on my back, I was truly glad to be wearing it. However, not nearly as glad as reaching under the armor and realizing the bullet didn't penetrate. I could hear even more yelling as I staggered back to my feet. As I finally got up, a few of the men came over and asked if I was okay. Assuring them that I was fine, they called everyone over so I could introduce myself. As they came over, I shook their hands and introduced myself in the midst of apologies for the rude welcoming. The one who should have been most apologetic seemed to sneer at the sheer sight of me. Looking around, there seemed to be about twice as many males as females. Along with that, only two females had gone through any transformation. One seemed to be sort of like a buffalo, while the other had a much more avian look. It was clear that they had either not changed much or eaten a whole lot of humans to look as, close to human again. The males, on the other hand, were almost a perfect split of human and creature. Many of them retained their split between human and animal look, but a few seemed to be much more human than creature for sure. This was not the surprising part. What threw me for a loop was the children. This was the first time in a very long time that I had seen children that had gone through the change. I'm sure my mouth was wide open in amusement as human children came out of the house with a very young tomcat, a male snake, a female goat person, a teenage girl avian type, and a male lizard without wings. When I inquired about them, it turned out that they had a few infants that had changed as well. That was the point that one man told me, "You can close your mouth now," which got a few laughs from the rest of the group. We conversed a bit before going inside. As we did, they offered me a cup of tea. Accepting it, I realized that it was very, very thin. They must have read my face because they quickly mentioned that their food storage was lacking, so they apologized for it being so meager. I do have to admit, I almost didn't drink it. You see, I served in the military a long time ago, and there are certain things that are drilled into you when you become a leader. One of those things is you never take from your subordinates, and I mean ever. Along with that, a real leader eats last and makes sure their subordinates are ready for whatever struggle they're getting into. With children around, I could barely bring myself to eat or drink before they had enough. However, even though they didn't look completely emaciated, they didn't look well fed either. That's when it hit me, and I feel like an idiot for not realizing it sooner. Pulling the pack off, I placed it on the table and said, Then it's a good thing I came prepared. Handing the bag to one of those on the table, they opened it and found a very large ration that I had received. When they made my lunch, the ladies were concerned that I was looking rather thin, so they made me enough for at least 2 large meals. Though it wasn't enough to feed the entire group as large as theirs, it was still a very welcome sight to them. Seeing the children's eyes light up was enough for me to excuse any hunger pains I may be having later. They thanked me for it, and we talked about how well each house was doing. They were interested in how well we were doing, of course, and if we could help, though I'm sure this was a bid to get some extra provisions. I cut them off and assured them that we would help where we can, though it might take me a while to find the part they needed to go into one of their tractors to get it running. However, hearing the amount of fuel they had made me more than a little interested in barter. While we spoke, the children started getting close, so close that they started poking at my armor. When I told them that it came from the big bugs, they all pulled away very fast. When I asked why, they informed me that they were having some trouble with the big bugs. A lot of trouble. They were the reason why they had such a difficult winter. They explained how a group of bugs began to probe their lines and eventually they swarmed the place. The group I was talking with was able to fight them off, but not without casualties. And that's when I noticed that the handsy dog, the one that reached for one of my dolls from before, was not around. The bugs had killed him and 2 others before they were fought off. I lowered my head in condolences and asked, "How could you not see them coming?" As I looked at the avian female with the wings on her back. Before she had a chance to say anything, the leader of the group stepped in and loudly said, "She can't fly." I looked at her wings and they were plenty large enough, nor did they look damaged. Truthfully, they made her look angelic. "Why not?" I asked her, and again he talked over her. "She was not meant to fly." I looked at him and said, "Neither was I, until I got these." I opened my wings a bit and shook them to drive the point home. "Now that I can fly, I can look over the house. This way we can see threats coming." The leader seemed to be holding on to ceremony as he kept his composure as he gritted his teeth and said, "We are not sending my wife up there to get picked off by one of those giant bat things or those wasps." Suddenly, I was sitting straight up. "Wasps?" I asked, my pulse now beating through my scales. "What do you mean, wasps?" I didn't realize they could hear the fear in my voice. The leader seemed to calm a bit as he explained that the wasp types my group had tangled before were the ones that gave them trouble over the winter. They not only attacked the group, but decimated their herd. This confused me to no end since bugs usually hibernate like I did. Asking for more details, they told me that the wasps had a fur coat on them, which seemed to be more for insulation. Along with being covered in fur, as well as being the size of a large dog, they have changed to have human eyes that are able to lock onto a target. These eyes are placed above their regular eyes, but also more towards the center of the head. Think almost top of the forehead, and you'll get the idea. Their stingers had also changed to be over 2 foot long spikes, which made them capable of piercing my armor. I shivered at the idea of that, especially since wasps are usually poisonous. After more discussion, they figured out which way the wasp had come from, by judging which way they had left. I knew I had to check things out, though before that, I did bring one last item up to the group. I said with all the determination I have, "When I take care of these bugs, your birds learn how to fly." The group looked at the leader, and he gave a slight nod before I turned and left. Though late in the day, I checked my compass and used the tree to help me take to the skies. I just pray it isn't as bad as I think it is, though, if I had to guess, it's probably worse.